to the At Ease podcast, where our guests share their own professional experiences to help educate, mentor, and provide insight to our active duty and transitioning servicemen and women, as well as our veterans and those considering entering the military. Our guest today is from Stockton, California, the great retired Captain Brent Hollywood Gaut. Yeah, a legend in the game. A legend in the game.
Thank you, sir.
Served in the Navy for 31 years as a Naval Aviator and a commanding officer. He attended the Naval Academy and was designated as a Naval Aviator in September 1996. His first tour of duty was the HSL 49 Scorpions. Next tour of duty was a flight instructor with HSL 41, where he was selected as Instructor Pilot of the Year. January 2004, he reported aboard the USS Bellawood as the mini-boss in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. In October 2005, he reported to HSL 45 as Det 4 OIC and a maintenance officer. I knew that was challenging. In January 2008, he reported to the Executive Office of the President, Office of National Drug Control Policy as a policy analyst. While assigned, he also served as the Staff Director of the Office of State, Local, and Tribal Affairs. In November 2010, he reported aboard HSM 77, Saberhawks, as his XO and CO tour. He became the skipper in January 2012 of HSM 77, and during his tour, he was the first Navy squadron to win the Department of Defense Phoenix Award. Congratulations.
Thanks, sir.
In March 2013, he reported to Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, where he earned a Master's of Art degree in National Security and Strategic Studies. In July 2014, he assumed command of HSM 41, West Coast FRS Squadron, Fleet Replacement Squadron, and during the tour of the squadron, he was awarded the Commander Theodore G. Ellison Aviator Production Excellence Award. That's something special. You must, yeah. That's something special.
It was our team that did it.
That's right.
Sure.
That's right. In May of 2017, he reported as the XO USS Gerald R. Ford. That's where him and I met. Ford tough all day.
All day.
In June 2019, he reported as the commanding officer USS San Antonio LPD 17. And in June 2021, he reported aboard as the CO of the USS George Washington, where he completed his final tour of duty. Sir, congratulations. That is a very, very impressive record. I mean, I didn't even hit all the highlights and the details, but I see why you are where you at today and who you are and like how special you are.
Thank you,
based off of that. So, yeah, I appreciate you coming aboard at these podcasts. Like I say, I've been trying to get you forever. Let me say that. And you finally, hey, you say, hey, I got you. So, and I'm glad, you came out and supporting us and doing this for us, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Ty. To you and AP, I just appreciate the opportunity to join you. You know how I feel about both of you, and so I knew it was just a matter of time until we could make it happen. So I'm grateful for this opportunity and also grateful for our friendship. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So back coming out of high school, what made you decide to join the military and specifically the Navy?
Yeah, so not much history in my family. My uncle had served in the Navy, so I knew a little bit about the Navy, but not much. And so when I got to high school, in Dana Point, California. I went to Dana Hills High School. We had been living in Hawaii for a few years and then moved to Southern California last couple months of my 8th grade year. So at Dana Hills, get to school, and this gentleman approached me almost from day one. Short, stocky, tattoos on his forearms. He took care of the grounds for us for the ball fields. Everyone called him Chief. I had no idea what that meant. I just thought his nickname was Chief.
Right.
And so he took a liking to me right away. We connected. He came up to me. He's like, and from the start, you're exactly what the Navy needs. I was 14 years old, and I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
I mean, I had no idea what he was talking about, but he was persistent, and he was always in my ear. He's like, listen. He's like, I know what the Navy's about, and you're the kind of young person that the Navy needs. So that kind of planted a seed initially, and then of course it was serendipitous that, and then Top Gun came out my freshman year in high school.
Yeah.
So I wasn't the first, and I won't be the last to see that movie. The gift that keeps giving when it comes to the impact the first movie and even the second movie have had on young people wanting to join, wanting to be aviators. So when I saw that as a freshman, that combined with my relationship with Chief Nick Bruno was his name.
Okay.
That just got into my head, and so as time went on throughout high school, Started thinking more and more about it, talking to the guidance counselor, then looking for opportunities, to be able to join the Navy. Then, of course, heard about the Naval Academy, also the ROTC programs that are out there. So I actually was in the midst of applying to the ROTC program at UCLA when the Blue and Gold officer in the area, because most areas have a Blue and Gold officer, someone who's retired, who then talks to young people about joining the Navy. We were in discussions, and he said, "Hey, listen, there's some opportunities out there, different schools that you can go to, that either the Naval Academy or schools that will lead to the Naval Academy." And I said, "I'm interested in that." So we started talking about that. There's the foundation schools, and then also the Naval Academy Preparatory School. So I had an interview with the congressman in California, because you need a nomination. I told him specifically that I wanted to go to the Naval Academy, no other service academy. And so a letter came shortly after that said, "Hey, congratulations, you have an appointment to West Point." And I said, "I don't want that. I'm sure it would be a great opportunity." And obviously respect those human beings and warfighters just as much as anyone else, but I really want to go to the Naval Academy. My heart's set on that. So the Blue and Gold officer said, "Well, then these preparatory schools or the Naval Academy Preparatory School, we can look at those opportunities." So then we applied, and I was accepted to the Naval Academy Preparatory School.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
14 years old.
14 years old.
And I ain't eyeballing you.
Yeah,
Jeez.
he was. Yeah, and my biggest regret, honestly, is that we didn't keep in touch. And so it was later on in life when I was thinking about him and his impact on my life and his willingness to pay it forward. And so I did a little research and found out he had passed. So something that's still on my bucket list, my to-do list, is to find his family.
Oh, wow.
And to reach out to them to say, "Hey, thank you, right, for your father or grandfather, great-grandfather. I just want you to know the impact he had in my life." And I'd like to think that because of his selflessness and his ability to reach out, he impacted thousands of sailors' lives in a positive way. And so,
And what is his name again?
Nick Bruno.
Nick Bruno.
Yeah, Nick Bruno.
Right. So if y'all
Navy
know,
Chief.
Navy
Navy
Pride.
Pride.
Yeah, no doubt. So at the Naval Academy, I know you probably got some heads up. Okay, they might be doing this, they're doing that. What was it like when you first got there, coming from the California area, Naval Academy, your midshipman? Like your first year, how was that? Like, and how did you adjust?
Yeah, because you're coming all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast.
Yeah, that was a shock. Most of the places I had lived were warm weather.
Yeah.
So getting to Newport, Rhode Island, where the prep school's at, that was a shock to the system. Of course, just a shock to the system. The initial training period, right? And just not ready for it, not used to it. They bring midshipmen from the academy and they train you for the first couple of weeks before you start the academic school year at the prep school. So I remember one of the first things that happened was, of course they're just yelling and screaming, and this is a different time, right? This is 1989, and they're yelling and screaming, just going crazy. And I don't even know the total number. I want to say there was probably like 200 to 300 of us that were there at the prep school. Because it's not just the prep school for the Naval Academy, it's also the prep school for the Coast Guard Academy.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So we're there, and they're like, "Let's go." We got done PT, and they're like, "Let's go get in the bathroom, go shower." So we're all standing in the head, and there's a whole bunch of stalls, and one person jumps in and starts taking a shower, and so they're looking at us, and they're like, "What are you waiting for?" And we're like, "We're waiting for the guy to get done," and they're like, "Get in there." And so we're like, "But he's in there." They're like, "We know. Get in there and go shower." So you jump in and you're kind of like, you're like this, standing, I'm just trying to shower, man. Like, they told me to get in here. And stuff. And it was just an eye-opening experience. Like, okay, we're not in, hey, Dorothy, we're not in Kansas anymore.
No.
Like, we're all grown up. And so that was just a shock to the system. And then just the rigor of the program, the academics, and then all the military training that we were doing. Newport, Rhode Island, winter comes. Oof, I mean, the wind off the Narragansett, cold as can be. Already cold with the wind chill, so that was definitely an adjustment.
Probably the first time you had to buy a jacket. Hawaii.
It sure was, but it also, that was the start of like, okay, and back then it's just like, there's no complaining. You just got to get through it. You got to be resilient. You got to be tough, and if you really want something, you're gonna hang in there and keep fighting. And so got to the end of the school year and then went to the Naval Academy. So already had an idea once I got to the Naval Academy for plebe summer. about military bearing, hospital corners, how to fold your clothes, how to wear your uniform. But what that did was gave me a false sense of security. Like I got it all figured out.
Okay.
So you're joining all the young people that are coming, some from the fleet, so they got it figured out too, but also some straight out of high school. And so it's a steep learning curve for them. So you're already ahead of the game, but the problem is they're smart and they're talented, and eventually they catch up. And so I was a knucklehead, you know,
Who was
just
it?
not humble. You know, it's like, hey, I used to be conceited, but now I'm perfect. It's like, come on now. So I was very full of myself, and I had a lot of learning to do. And so by the time you got to the second part of Plebe Summer, all those people that had come in that were brand new, they caught up pretty quick. Yeah. And so you go from being one of the ones that the second class midshipmen, the detail leaders are looking at as like, hey, you're my example, to, hey, you need to fix yourself because you're falling behind. All these young men and women are catching up, and you're just so full of yourself. And so that first year was very, very difficult because I just had this vision of, you know, how great I was and everything's going to be easy, and it wasn't. And, you know, I was always confident, though. And so a lot of times when you're confident, but you're not backing it up with your actions, you're just seen as arrogant.
Right.
And, you know, and so that didn't go over well with the upperclassmen. And so a couple hard lessons there. So came back for my sophomore year, you know, still kind of struggling through that. And really, my entire time at the academy was such a blessing, and I didn't appreciate it. I didn't appreciate the opportunity. Looking back now, I wish I would have been more appreciative of the opportunity to be at one of the best schools in the nation, and just a crucible of learning about leadership and education and being close to all these young people that mean so much to you. All your closest friends were within 100 feet of you in a different, you know, corridor in a different building. And I just didn't, you know, you take it for granted. Yeah. So
how long? Because you know, a lot of us growing up, we tend to do that a lot. So, bro, about like how long did it take you in your career before you had the opportunity to look back at that time frame and be like, you know, I kind of dropped the ball? And
it's a great question. I would say that I was definitely one of those late bloomers. I mean, I don't think that I really started to figure it out about being selfless, about, you know, being thankful for the opportunities that you have until I was probably a lieutenant. I would say 28, 29. When I really started to look at, you know, hey, you're blessed to be in this position. You know, you're blessed to, you know, one, you're an aviator. Two, you work with incredible people. You get a chance to impact young people. And I started to realize if you just apply yourself, Brent, you probably could be pretty good at this.
So did something happen that made you
I don't know. I don't know if it was anything in particular. I mean, I would say certainly on my first deployment, my officer in charge, Paul Gardner, still a dear mentor and friend of mine, you know, pulled me aside on deployment. And, you know, again, being a knucklehead, getting in trouble, me and my running mate, the other helicopter second pilot, we had 4 aircraft commanders and 2 helicopter second pilots, me and my buddy Dan Morch. And we were just, you know, we're in Australia and, you know, all these great locations and just having a lot of fun, hair on fire.
Yeah.
And one port visit after the port visit, my OIC was
what
like...
year is this around, like 90?
So this is 98.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So my OIC pulls me aside and he's like, Brent, I love you, right? You're a great young man, and man, you got a lot of potential, but that doesn't mean anything unless you do something with it. So I can't protect you from the aircraft commanders, the lieutenants. They're pulling their hair out because you just can't quite figure it out. I just need you to be better. You got to start to figure this out, right? I need you to grow up. And that was one of those, you know, I mean, he's not my dad. I love my dad, and he's my dad, but he's like a dad. That advice, that hard conversation, you just got to be better. You got to figure it out. And I'm here to help you, but you got to meet me halfway. And that kind of flipped the switch. The rest of that deployment, I applied myself. I was the admin officer for the detachment. Applied myself, you know, was working hard, studied to make aircraft commander, and just then once you start doing that and you start to build a little momentum, it feels good.
Right.
You're like, I'm doing okay now. And, you know, you get some recognition. Hey, you're doing a good job. Hey, you're aircraft commander board. You did great. Hey, you're making an impact in the squadron. Hey, we need you to do this next job because we think you have the ability to do it. And really that started kind of building that momentum at my first squadron. And then, of course, then getting to the FRS as an instructor.
That's a big deal.
Was kind of that next step. Was then, hey, now I feel like being recognized as one of the bright young people in the community. We want you to be an instructor. We want you to teach that next generation. And it kind of took off from there.
Right, because being elite as a young lieutenant, you know, oh, wow, y'all selected me. Because me being a squadron guy, I know how it works. Yeah. And I watch them. You know, this happened like my branch officers and my division officers. You know, they were instructor pilots. And I'm looking at them like, oh, man, that must be something big. But they wasn't giving it out to everybody. That's how I knew that you was like one of the elites because you got that qualification.
Well, I appreciate that time. I mean, it's one of those things, too, where, you know, and you guys saw in your careers where if you perform at a certain level, that's why I love the military. One of the many reasons I love the military. It's meritocracy. Yeah. You know, we need you to perform at a high level. Right. And if you continue to do that and you have that sustained superior performance, then you're going to get a chance, and we're going to try to open other doors for you. Right. So going to the Fleet Replacement Squadron as instructor, it just opens that door a little more, right? So now you're there with the best of the best from other commands, other young pilots, and you're like, okay, so now how am I going to do here?
I got you.
Am I going to be able to break out here? Because now it's a little more intimidating. Yeah. Now you're taking the 1, 2, 3 best from all the other squadrons,
and then you're all together.
And you know, now you got to compete against them. And so learned a lot there as well. Yeah.
Gotta be humble too, because you
gotta be humble because you're like, all right, you know, it's you're not automatically the best of the best. You got to prove yourself again.
So, the name Hollywood, where do you get that? Like, where did that come into play?
Just lucky. I mean, there's so many call signs out there that you can get. It's like, woof, man.
I didn't. Or what? Like,
so that was it. Okay. It was really just being from California. A lot of people equate California with Hollywood. I would also say that, you know,
it fits the style.
The schmedium shirts going out to the club. You know, the frosted tips. You know, my wife. It's so funny now. Even now, my wife's like, I cannot believe you had frosted tips. I'm like, you met me when I had frosted tips. You still married me.
You still married.
Right. Good call by you. Yeah. Right. Congratulations. Yeah. So we have a good laugh about that. But no, really, it was just being from California and you know. Kind of living that life out there, just having a good time, flying aircraft, having fun with buddies, going out. Right. It's like Hollywood. It was kind of a fit. I think an easy one. Yeah.
Because like you first meet like, oh, this is call sign Hollywood. You like, dude, sound like you a little cocky. Like, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, I get that all the time.
But when you get to know you, it's like you make Hollywood sound cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. You make it sound cool because it's like, hey, you got to know him to understand him. Like, he really cares. You know, he just does.
That's actually one of the most important things I learned in my career as time went on. You know, when you're younger, you're so worried about what other people think of you.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a natural people pleaser. It's just kind of how I'm wired. So I was spending so much time and energy, you know, so much emotion on whenever I would hear something negative about myself, when it came from someone who honestly didn't really know me. And so it was a turning point for me where it was like, hey, you need to focus on, don't pay attention to that. It's just noise, right? There's a whole bunch of people in your village and in your circle that love you and care about you and support you. Those are the ones that you should be worried about.
Right.
You know, what's your mom think? What's your dad think? What's your siblings think? Right? What does the mess think? Right. Talk to your chief. What's your chief say about you? When I started to worry about, because your chief cares about you, because your chief wants you to be better. Right. So once I started focusing on that, it was very liberating.
There you go.
And I stopped worrying about, because the bottom line, what I learned is, and certainly I learned it towards the latter part of my career even more, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, at any given time, it's not necessarily going to change someone's opinion of you. Their opinion is their opinion.
They're still going to judge you.
They're still going to weigh in and measure and judge you. So you got to do what you think is right. You got to take all the information. You got to talk to the people that you trust. You got to talk to your master chiefs and your senior chiefs, your chiefs, your CMC, your XO. I need your feedback, and I need the honest feedback. And then you take all the information, and then you make the decision, knowing that at any given time when you make a decision, 51% are going to approve of it, and 49% are going to hate you for it, or vice versa. But you did the best you could based on the information you had for the benefit of the entire crew and the majority. And so once you kind of see your way through that, again, that's very liberating too, because no longer are you worried about pleasing everyone. Because if you try to do that, you're going to please no one, right? And I think that's a hopeless situation to be
Right,
in.
to deal with. Yeah. So flight school. Let me go back a little bit.
That was CO talking right
Yeah,
there.
that was CO talking. He didn't jump from the lieutenant to the CO real quick, like. But it's all love. Going through flight school, I mean, you start out at the simulator, then you actually got your first taste. What's the first plane you flew?
So you start out flying the T-34.
T-34 out of Pensacola.
Charlie, we call it the Chucky Mentor.
Okay.
The T-34 Charlie.
Clown cars. That's what we call them, flight deck guys.
Yeah.
I was in White Field. So
Totally
familiar with it.
Yeah, so just an amazing aircraft. So fun as can be.
Really?
Oh yeah, just flying. You're finally in the aircraft. You're doing the simulator. You jump in the aircraft, and you're like, I cannot believe I'm doing this.
For real?
Greatest thing ever. So you do that, and then from there you pick. Are you going to go rotary? Are you going to go prop? Or are you going to go fixed wing? So I wanted to be a jet guy. There's no doubt about it.
No.
Yep, wanted to be a jet.
Not you.
Yes.
No,
I know it's hard to believe.
Top Gun got him.
But had so much fun in flight school that didn't have the grades to do it.
Really?
Right. So just had fun, hair on fire. I was start out. Of course, everyone starts in Pensacola, and then you go to wherever you're going. And I went to Corpus Christi, Texas. Had a blast there. So they go, listen, Bubba, you got a couple options. You can go props or helos. And so talked to a couple folks that were instructors in the T-34 and that had flown in the fleet and said, hey, can you give me your perspective on what you flew? And so there was this guy, helo guy, Lieutenant Brown, and just a great guy. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, I flew the 60 Bravo, great aircraft, had a lot of fun. He's like, hey, by the way, P3s, all that per diem money's going away, which it didn't. So he's like,
shout out to P3s.
Yeah, he's like, so you should go helos.
Yeah.
And so again, right? It's just amazing when you look back on your career and all the different influences that led you to be where you ended up.
Right.
Again, I just say it's serendipitous. And so I chose 60s.
Really?
Helos.
Yeah.
So then went back to went to Whiting, went to Pensacola. To fly the TH-57.
Yeah.
So flew that, and then got winged in September of '96. September 13th of '96. Never forget, it was a Friday. So me and my buddies, we had a great time, and then got 60 Bravos, and they said, "Hey, you're headed out to San Diego." So it was
back to Cali.
Back to
Cali, fired up,
ready to go.
I mean, I was like, "Let's go!"
Yeah.
Had a Jeep.
You living that life.
Like driving cross country, top down, just living the dream. And so I knew my family was in California. I'd been in San Diego enough to know how awesome it was. My grandma at the time was living in San Diego in a nursing home, so I was excited about going back there to be closer to her and see her. And so it just was. I was happier than a pig in mud.
So, there's a question. I'm going to kind of go off the road for a minute here. Because we was talking earlier, you're a Cowboys fan, but you was Cali. And I'm thinking, like, this time frame that the 49ers was doing pretty good.
Yeah, sure.
Northern California, though.
So where does Cowboys come from?
Crazy story. So, I'm pretty much LA everything. Even though I was from Northern California, born in Stockton, grew up there for 9 years before we moved to Hawaii. My dad was always an LA fan. He loved the Lakers, Dodgers, so just became a fan of those teams. And now Hockey Kings, I cheer for them as well. But for some reason, he was a Niners fan, and I was living with my mom at the time, my sister. And my first conscious memory of watching football, I was 5 years old, 1976, and there was only one pregame show on. It was on CBS. It was Brent Musburger, this guy named Irv Cross, Phyllis George, and Jimmy the Greek Schneider. And so I'd watch the show every Sunday. And then, of course, back then, right, there wasn't the cable, the football, the games that were on were either on ABC, NBC, or CBS. And so the Cowboys were on a lot. The Niners were a couple years away from Bill Walsh and, Montana and Dwight Clark and all that whole crew. And so the Cowboys were on a lot. And I just fell in love with them. The Star, I had the Kmart socks, the blue and gray, pulled up high, my little Cowboys duffel bag and my jacket. I got pictures I can show you. It's legit. And so I just became a diehard fan, and I have been ever since. And it's just something that really stuck with me. So
I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah, that's what.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's been a tough run in the last
Woo!
30 years.
I really want to talk about it,
Yeah.
but not right now.
Yeah. So since the Commanders
yeah.
since the Commanders are going to the NFC Championship game, the Cowboys now in the NFC, the longest drought of a team going to the conference championship game. So
I'm sorry. I just
a
had
dubious title.
You had to act so much. California, Hollywood.
Yeah. So it's pretty much everything Cali except for that.
team.
Yeah.
What lessons learned as a young JO that you could give a JO right now? You know, from where you at, what you've been through, what you dealt with as a junior officer, you know, rather in your first command or in the FRS. What type of information could you give them to kind of help them along right now?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple things. So it's funny, when I was younger, so one of the things I loved about our profession was just the connection, right? I mean, we have the greatest machines in the world, right? Best ships, aircraft, submarines, all that good stuff. Best equipment, technology. It's still a people business. Right? It's about the people.
Right.
And it's about the connection you have with the people. And so it's ironic that when I, later in my career, often got, commended for that. Hey, you have a real connection with your team, with your sailors. You care about them, you're personal, you talk to them, you get to know them, you ask them questions. And it wasn't that I changed. I was like that when I was a JO. But I got criticized for that because they're like, you can't be that personal.
I got you.
Or personable with an enlisted sailor, and I'm like, okay, I mean, these are my shipmates. I mean, I just, I'm like, hey, Bubba, how's it going? They're like, no, you got to call him AWR too. I'm like, okay, he's just one of my Bubbas, man. He's a shipmate. Right. And so, had some hard conversations with some senior people, and then fast forward, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, that goes a long way. And there's not enough leaders that are doing that, that are vulnerable enough to connect with their sailors on that level. Everyone knowing there's lines you don't cross, but you can still tell your sailors you love them.
Yes.
You can still tell them, like, I got you, right? I'm here for you, and I'm going to do everything I can to support you. So to answer your question, the first thing I'd say is be authentic. Okay. Be yourself, right? Don't, if it's not nefarious and you're staying above board and it's just how you are, then don't fight that. Just figure out how you can use it, but be yourself and be true to yourself, because if you don't, you're going to be miserable, right? And the second thing is, and it's not because both of you are master chiefs, but I would say listen to your chief, right? I think so much of the reason that chiefs are so remarkable is because they're not only responsible for taking care of sailors and showing them what right looks like, but they're also responsible for that up the chain of command. Yeah. So often they're responsible for taking that junior officer to say, hey, I got you. If you just have an open mind and understand that I know who's who, I know you're the officer, I'm the chief, I'm going to call you sir or ma'am, there's always going to be that level of respect that I have for you based on, the rank and the uniform. But just humble yourself for a second. Understand that I've been here, I've been around a bit, I know a little bit about a little bit, and I'm going to show you how to be a better officer. Right. That would be, because I think so often you're trying to find your place as a young leader. Yeah. And so sometimes you feel like you got to put your foot down or stand your ground or, take a stand. And I'm not saying that there aren't moments like that, but you need to humble yourself and understand that chief petty officer has seen a lot and has been around a lot and has probably dealt with things that you haven't yet dealt with. And so while there are certainly things that even as a brand new officer you can teach a chief, right? Paperwork being one of them. A lot of great chiefs don't like paperwork, right? So hey, I can work with you on that, right? We can help each other on the evals and whatnot. Right. But man, chief, when it comes to the business side of it, the work side of it, the technical expertise side of it, the subject matter expertise side of it, I need you. I need you to teach me and show me. And so I would encourage that JO to think about that.
Okay. And that's good information to know, because that makes that JO a better officer.
100%.
A better officer, not just even at the JO level, when they become the department head level, and then maybe CO, XO, whatever like that. So
and sets them up for success. And I say, listen, I've seen it done a lot of ways in commands, right? Again, I was blessed to command 4 different commands, 2 helicopter squadrons and 2 ships. When it's done right, if you have a strong connection with your chief, and then as you gain experience and rank and responsibility with the mess, you're unstoppable, right? Because the mess is going to sustain you, is going to buoy you, is going to help you continue to develop as an officer and as a leader. And then when the hard stuff needs to be done, and you're willing to give that to your chief or chiefs, there's nothing that the command can't accomplish.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
As long as you're willing to give that up, and throw out that trust. Right? I'm not saying don't follow up, but that trust. I trust that the mess is going to take care of that, and then the mess is willing to stand up and say, "We got you." Right.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll take care of that, Captain or Sir or Ma'am, and then we'll get back to you when the job is done. And I mean, there's nothing
it's easy
that can stop you.
Yeah.
So how
As a
many
commander.
commands did it take for you to get this mind state? You know.
Hey, that's another great question. I think sometimes as a young officer, and when I say young, I say it in the context of, having been blessed to be a carrier CO. As an 05 CO in commander command, I mean, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? So you roll in hot, you're the XO. Now you're in your wheelhouse because you know aviation, you know how squadrons run, you know how to fly, obviously. So a lot of it is just learning the day-to-day operations of the squadron and how to be a better leader. And then you fleet up to CO, and of course at that point, everyone, if you've done it right, everyone in the squadron, because it's a smaller command, right? It's 270-ish, plus or minus.
And everyone's close.
Everyone's close, and everyone knows each other. They know you. They know what they're getting when you fleet up to CO. And I was just so blessed at HSM 77. I mean, the team was unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, if you pulled up a roster right now of all the XOs and COs in the HSM community, I mean, it is chock full of the men and women that were at my squadron as junior officers. And not my squadron, but our squadron. Yeah. And so we had so much talent. The mess was loaded with talent. CMC was extraordinary. And so I was kind of like, this is great. And we had gone through a deployment when I was XO, and then we did a compressed FRTP, the Fleet Readiness and Training Plan, and then they pushed us back out the door again. I think it was 8 months after we got back.
Oh, wow.
So we went right back out. And then I took command 1 month into that second deployment. Oh, wow. So we were like, everyone was just
gone.
We were just jiving, flowing, everything. Everyone knew each other. We knew how to work together. We knew how to work with the air wing. And so I was spoiled. I was spoiled by the talent that I had around me. So to answer your question, AP, I would say it was probably once I got through that tour and then blessed to be the CO of the FRS, then you jump into the ship world. And once I got through the training pipeline, the aviation nuclear pipeline, and then got to the ship as the XO on the fort. And that's really where I can argue that the last 8 years of my career, when I started, because it's an 8-year pipeline, to start nuclear power school, go to prototype, do extra training at Naval Reactors headquarters in DC, then you get to the ship as the XO, and then you go through Deep Draft Command, which was the San Antonio, and then if you're picked to command a carrier as a CO, in total it's about 8 years. I can argue that I learned as much about leadership in those 8 years than I did in the first 22 years of my career. Just based on, because the carrier is such a different animal. You get there, just your, at the squadron level, your force of nature personality can drive a lot of what's going to happen. Because you know everyone, like you said. By the time you become a CO, it's a close-knit group. And you get to the carrier, and you put out direction to the heads of department and the departmental lead and chief petty officers. And there's a good chance that some things are going to get lost in translation, right? And you just cannot control things. You have to learn how to give up control and power to your team. And if you don't, you're going to be miserable and you're going to fail.
Why do you believe some leaders are like that, where they're afraid? And maybe because they was in a bad situation, someone probably done them bad at some point in time. But you find leaders, COs types, that are afraid to relinquish that responsibility over to their subordinates.
I think there's a couple of things that play into that. I think that there's one is that usually when you get to that level, like when you're a master chief, you didn't get there by accident. Right? There's a couple people that might slip through the cracks, but you got picked for a reason. You're an outlier. You're driven at a certain level to excel and to succeed and to make a difference and to be the best at what you do. So that's one part of it. I do think the second part is self-preservation. There's a certain aspect of I don't, now that I'm at this level, I don't want to lose this opportunity. I don't want to get fired.
Right.
And so I need to, I need to protect it and control as much as I can control. The problem is, and on the carrier, you just can't do it. It's impossible. It's
impossible.
You're never gonna sleep. You're never gonna rest. Your quality of life is significantly going to decrease.
Right.
And I just think you're going to be an unhappy person. And so you have to learn how to give that up, give some of that up, and trust your people and have those hard conversations and say, hey, I know you got me, I got you. We're going to be there for each other. Go get it.
And I told somebody that literally like a couple of weeks ago. Somebody was in my office, a young chief, and they asked me how was it, going up the ranks. I was like, the more you go up the ranks and, grow in leadership, the more it's about relinquishing the power that you have, empowering others, you know, and that's going to help you grow because you can't take on those new added responsibilities, still trying to do your old responsibilities too. You know what I'm saying? Like you did that already. You know how that goes. I'm gonna train you how to do that. I got to give up some of those powers so that I can develop new ones or be receiving of new ones so that I can continue to learn myself. You know what I mean? So that's
and that's a great point, Pete. And I'll tell you, I wish I could remember the exact name of the book. I think it was called The Power of Giving Away Power. But one of my, the REA on the George Washington, a young man, Kenny Brown, he said, sir, I think you should read this book, and recommended it to me, and I read it. And it's talking about that, like the power of giving away power and allowing, of course, again, you have to have structure in place to make it work, but letting your people know, like, listen, I trust you, right? And so here's the process we have set up. I need you to go do what you do. Now, I am going to ask for the feedback loop to be completed. I need you to come back and tell me, give me updates, tell me how it's going.
I give you 100%.
Yeah,
but I got 90.
But
the other 10, I need you to come back and talk to me.
But go get it, because I just don't have the bandwidth to control everything, and nor do I want to.
No.
And because here's the thing too, right? As a junior person at any level, when you have your junior working for someone senior, so it could be an E3 working for an LPO. It could be a chief working for a master chief. I mean, it could be an O1 working for a department head. It could be a captain working for the admiral, right? You want the freedom. You selected me for this job or this position for a reason. You want the freedom to go out and do the job.
Right.
And if not given that freedom to do that, then you're just going to sit and wait for the senior person to tell you what to do, because every time you do something, they say, no, just do this. Well, then I'm just going to stop leaning forward. I'm just going to wait for you to stop thinking, and I'm going to wait for you to tell me what to do. And that's no way. I just don't think terrible leadership. And you obviously don't want to. That's hard to deal with that. And obviously it stunts your growth, I think, as a leader. So.
That's a good way. That's a good way to wrap that up. That was good. All right, flipping back to being a pilot. How many flight hours you
just shy of 3,000.
Okay.
Which is actually fairly low compared to, you look at a lot of the guys, especially the fixed wing Bubbas, man, it's well over 3,000 into the 4,000. But I'm very grateful for the time that I had flying, and as much as I loved it, that wasn't the primary thing that drove me. And if it was, I don't think I would have pursued the path that I did.
Okay.
In the Navy, because I love the people and I love the leadership aspect of it, and was always excited for that next opportunity to get to that next level, to expand the scope of responsibility and have a chance to impact more lives. So. Okay.
So out of them 3,000 hours, you've seen a lot of missions. What's a mission that like you like, wow, that we did that, or good or bad, or also, and what have you seen out there that you say, wow, that's a beautiful sight?
So the cool thing about the helicopters, you go a little slower than the fixed wing Bubbas, right? So you got a little more time to kind of enjoy the scenery. So there's a number of times early on as a junior officer when we deployed to 7th Fleet. And so a lot of the, it's just beautiful out there, right? Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. Of course, when you depart from San Diego, headed out, you're going to stop in Hawaii. And so a number of flights that we did, you got to see just some beautiful islands and just some beautiful scenery, just things that you're like, wow, that's waterfalls, that's beautiful. I would say something that you look back and go, whew, that was spicy. And so one of the deployments that I had, I was blessed to be the officer in charge of Det 4 at HSL 45. And so we did a deployment to the Eastern Pacific. And we were chasing drug runners. And so we were on a frigate, the McCluskey, FFG 41, and we had single aircraft. We only had one helicopter. So we went out there, and we had a law enforcement detachment on board, Coast Guard Bubas, right? So we would get intel that there's potentially, some smugglers out there. So we would, board the vessel, and then, they would sometimes, they'd confiscate the narcotics, bring it on board. And then also times when you had a go fast, and it's like, hey, there's a go fast, it's running, it's those things can move pretty quick. There's a crew of 3 or 4 on board, aircraft launch, and you go track it. Right? And of course, we had bilateral agreements with a lot of the countries in that region. And so, sometimes we can get pretty close to the coast and chase them down and try to stop them. And so with the law enforcement detachment on board, we had one of their guys in the back, and he had a row bar, right? Just a massive gun that when he shot it, and the helicopter's big, with a full bag of gas, we're probably, 19, 20,000 pounds, and it shook the helicopter. It was so powerful. So we're on a mission. I'm sitting right seat flying. I got my co-pilot over here. Pull up on the go fast, trying to get them to slow down, and they won't slow down. And so he takes the row bar, it's like boom, boom, and a couple shots, takes out the engine, the outboard engine, and so then obviously it starts to slow.
Right.
So we slow down a little bit, and I'm pacing right with them. I mean, we're at 50 feet or so, kind of watching them, and just flying right seat. I have a great view, and then one of the gentlemen on board has this gallon or this big tub of gas, and he's I don't know what it is at first, and he starts pouring it all over the go fast, right? And I'm like, I think that's gas. And sure as can be, lights a flare.
Stop.
Drops it. Boom. Huge explosion. And I was like, holy, right? And so bodies are flying everywhere. I think there was 4 individuals on board. Their bodies are flying. They get blown out of the go fast. And so, of course, we take off, come back around, and they're all in the water. None of them hurt. Some scrapes and bruises and whatnot.
What?
But for the most part, we're fine. So then it became a search and rescue, right? And that's what we do as the United States, right? It's obviously there's drugs that are getting, and obviously there was drugs on board, and it was going down to the bottom of the ocean. But the McCluskey was not far behind us. Came around, picked him up, brought him on board, and then the lead interviewed him.
Wow.
And so just the sight of like, is he pouring gas on his go fast? Was just mind blowing, and the fact they survived, it was a miracle. Yeah. So that was a very interesting deployment. A lot of action for us.
Okay.
Being out there, not tied to a strike group, and the captain had been a master chief sonar tech, got commissioned as officer, and then was the CEO of the ship. So he had. It's funny because at one point, a few years later, I actually saw him. He was still in. A couple years later, he was the Desron Commodore in Japan, and he was on the cover of Navy Times because he was one of like 4 or 5 people that they profiled as were the longest tenured in the Navy. He at that point had like 38 or 40 years. Yeah, Captain Schultz, amazing human being. So he was a go-getter. He's like, let's go do it. He's like, let's go get after it and do it. And so it was a really fun deployment.
Nice.
Oh man, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
But just blow this boat up.
Listen, dude. gotta burn the contraband. No evidence. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess they were smart.
And they all
and they
survived.
were. Yeah,
And they all survived. Yeah.
So coming from a squadron where you had working like the maintenance guys, airframers, the mechs, ATs, AEs, and then you go to the Bellawood. How was that the difference doing that with the maintainers than working with ABs?
So
These are mini balls.
Sure.
Right.
So got to the Bella.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
Probably was better.
Different
Well, I
world.
ain't gonna say that.
So I will tell you this. So when
Your
you're
ABs can raise you up.
they
Let
are
them answer.
they are so amazing.
Yeah.
you
And,
go.
and what happened was when you're at the squadron as a JO, very rarely, again, smaller, organizations, 250 to 270 people. So I had done my first tour as a JO, then at 49, went to the FRS to 41, and then they said, hey, you're gonna head to the Bellawood. And so you don't see a lot. And as a junior officer, as a division officer, you're responsible. Like I had line division, and so that was interesting because with a lot of young sailors, the first job at the squadron, and so you get a taste of like, okay,
that's good.
Hey, some young sailors, they got hard workers, but maybe might be struggling with something, and so that's where the leadership part of it, like, hey, we got to take care of our young people. But you just don't see a lot of sailors getting in trouble, and then you get to the Bellawood, and I tell you what. Our ABs. So first of all, John Vicio was our deal CPO, just a great American. Ended up eventually going the CMC route.
Okay.
And I saw him again a few years later. He was the CMC at HSL-51 in Japan, but just a dear friend and just a warfighter. So he took me under his belt. He's like, listen, if an AB's not at sea, then they're probably wrong, right? That's what we do. ABs go to sea.
Right.
So he was just a great mentor. Again, that chief officer. Senior chief, master chief mentorship, where he's like, hey, I got you. I'm going to take you under my wing, and I'm going to show you what it's like on a big deck like this. Because the deployments I had done as a junior officer were on frigates and cruisers and destroyers.
Right.
So being there, what I realized about ABs is that I don't know if there's a harder working rate or rating in the Navy, right? Those guys were like, oh, how many hours do you need us on the flight deck? Let's go. This is what we do. Let's go do it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, at sea, they were extraordinary. It wasn't until we got back home,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden,
Hey, hold on.
I'm like, hey,
You said that seat?
yeah,
They're
it's like,
extraordinary.
hey,
But when you pull in,
yeah, mini boss, you got to show up to XOI, executive officer inquiry, because one of our sailors got in trouble, and I was like, again? They're like, yep, again, right? So it was an eye-opening experience of. That's where I really learned about the NJP process, right? The non-judicial punishment process, how XOI worked, CAMS mass, because I had to be there.
It's not like you get people don't get in trouble like that.
They don't. But you get home and the ABs are like, well, we don't get to do what we love to do, so my hair's on fire and I'm gonna go get after it. I mean, we had a young sailor living in base housing in San Diego. And he had a buddy living with him because he needed a place to live, and he was charging him rent. I'm like, Bubba, you can't live in base housing and then charge your buddy rent. Like, that's not the way it works, And so he's like, I didn't know that. So I'm like, I got you. And so that was, I think, an honest mistake.
Yeah,
but there's sometimes when they're doing things, you're like, we got to get back to sea. We got to go back to sea.
Right. That's they like.
Got to get away.
And
we got to save them.
And when you said that.
Yes.
The hardest working rate. I want to go against you. I just want to, but I would say this: my first ship's company tour, it was ABs that trained me. Really, like what the ship was about.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my close friends, he was an ABH chief, but he had all his sailors in my duty section make sure that my duty section was on point. It was ABs. Now I always give them credit because I want to go against what you just said earlier, but I'm gonna let it go.
And they love their job.
They love they
ABHs, ABEs, ABS, right? They love what they do, and it's just whenever you're struggling as an officer, and like, hey, I'm off track right now. I got to get back on track, and you just go talk to some ABs out there on the flight deck, and their motivation, how excited they are, it inspires you, and it makes you realize, you know what, we are pretty blessed to get to do what we do. Right. So stop complaining, Brent, and go get after it.
Yeah. They always say it's so many conversations held from that bow to the stern. It's so many conversations
and dangerous
that
too, right?
held.
Like that environment, I think it's one of those jobs, very courageous to get to it doesn't happen often, but when it does, usually something bad has happened.
Control chaos.
Control chaos, someone's getting hurt. They go out there with a smile on their face and rain, shine, heat, cold, and they get after it.
Yeah.
And the ages of those young men and women.
Man, just
doing that.
Mind blowing.
Yeah.
So I love them.
All right, enough about that. So, I ain't giving them too much credit.
I approve.
You ain't ordinance. You ain't.
Oh yeah, shit. They already know. They already know. So, becoming a CO, you fleeting up XO. Now you the CO. What squadron?
HSM 77.
HSM 77.
Yeah, and then 41, you go straight in as a CO.
Go straight in as CO, right.
Up, yeah.
What was that like? Like, because you started out that JO. Probably got to the squadron, Lieutenant JG. Ain't qualified to do nothing.
Yeah.
You know, but you there. And now you like, well, I'm the CO of a squadron. You know, like, I did it.
So, I mean, first of all, it's that day, right? And it's that's what I love about that process, right? Where even the service community has adopted the aviation model of, we're going to do the fleet up.
Right.
We're now an XO on a ship, although they do it a little different. Usually the XO will, let's say a DDG is doing the fleet up. The XO will actually leave for a little bit, go through some, schooling.
Okay.
Just take a deep breath, get a little time with the family, because that's obviously a hard job on the ship.
Right.
The new XO comes in, and then the old XO will report back, and then we'll take command of the ship. And so they've adopted that model because there's a lot of goodness in it. I think the communities too are doing a better job of talking to each other now. It used to be a lot of like, well, you do what you do, we do what we do. Oh. And now I think the aviation and service communities are really doing a great job of looking at, hey, best practices, lessons learned. What do you do? Maybe we should try that. And so the cool thing about the squadron, you wake up as the XO and you go to sleep as the CO. Because that day, right, you do a change command ceremony and it's like, I got it. Right, you shake the CO's hand, someone obviously that you're close to because you've worked with him and for him for a while. You salute the admiral and say, "Sir, I'm ready to assume all duties and responsibilities of HSM 77 or whatever command it is."
Right.
And he's like, "Okay, young man or young woman, you got it."
Yeah.
And so it was just very humbling thinking back because again, I realized that. There's a book out there called Outliers. It's a great book. Malcolm Gladwell wrote it. And it just talks about how, yes, you have to be someone who has a certain drive to get to where you go in life, but there are so many factors that influence you and impact you. There are so many people that are part of your village that helped you get to where you're at. There's so many circumstances. The year you were born, the city that you were born in, the opportunities that you got, the doors that were opened by people for you, the people that didn't give up on you and said, you know what, I don't know why I continue to believe in you, but I do. Let's go. I got you, right? And so it was one of those very surreal moments when I thought back to all the people that had influenced. And so it was this isn't about me, this is about us, which is cool in a way that carried through my entire career. Yank Cummings, our CO on Ford, and first talked about we, us, our, and that was the first time I heard it phrased like that, but I felt it and lived it, most of my career where, except when I was a knucklehead JO, but it's we, us, our, and it's just so much more satisfying when you do it as a team.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was a day where I just gave a lot of credit and recognition, and maybe not even verbally because I couldn't talk to the people because we were on deployment. We did it underway.
Oh.
But I in my mind, I was like, you know what? This is not about me. This is about the people that have influenced me and that have been there to support me. Most importantly, my family and my closest friends. But sailors, shipmates, and so it was very, very just humbling.
Yeah.
Blessing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you left the squadron as a CO, the HSM 77. Then you go to the FRS. That's a captain billet, or that's a?
So it's a commander. Well, commander. It used to be a captain billet. They actually did away with it, and then they tried to open up another opportunity for a first-time CO to go in there. And then I think after a couple of years, and there's a couple of things that happened, they realized, you know what, this has to be they call it bonus command. It has to be something where, it's someone who's already had command of an operational squadron and then comes in, because it's just a different animal. Yeah. Because the FRS has more aircraft, it has more people, and you have civilians as well. So I think we were close to 800 people compared to 270 at the commander command level. Yeah. And now, and so they didn't make it a captain command any longer. It was a senior commander job, but definitely someone who was tracking to select for captain and then become a captain. But while I was there, I did not put on captain. I remained a commander in rank. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
And before that, after HSM 77, that's when I went to War College for a year.
And that's when you picked up captain.
Yeah, I did a geo batch tour actually. So my wife stayed in San Diego because we were confident I was going to come back. We didn't know I was going to come back as the CO of the FRS. but confident that I was going to come back. And so she stayed there because we were trying to get pregnant, and we were struggling. We were doing IVF, and our doctor was there in San Diego, and she's like, "Listen, I think I need to stay so that we can continue to work with our doctor." And I said, "Okay, well then I'll geo-batch. I'll head to Newport, stay there for a year." The great thing about the program there at War College is that there's and I started my year there in March, so did a semester. And then you have the summer. So during the summer, they let you go home, you see your family, and then come back, do the fall, and then the winter, and then graduate. So it wasn't like I didn't get to see her for a year. I got to come home. And again, God's got a plan. Right? So while I was there, as we were going through the IVF process, she got pregnant with our first child, Jacob. Yeah, so we have 3 now. And so Jacob, she got pregnant with Jacob. He's 11 now. And so it was meant to be. God had a plan.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then while at the War College, that's when we found it. In fact, it was almost as I pulled up. I left San Diego, drove cross country. We were going through an IVF cycle, so your spouse has to be bedridden for 72 hours. So I was able to be there for the first 48, and then I was like, "Baby, I got to go," know. And so we had some friends help us out, but got on the road, got there to Newport because I was already a little bit late to start the semester, and got my old strike group admiral reached out and said, "Hey, congratulations, you selected for bonus command." So so that moment we knew I was definitely going back to San Diego, and was going to get a chance to command the squadron that I first started my career at as a student. When I first because that's because when I first got to San Diego in '96 after I got winged. I was a student at HSL 41. And it was funny, too, because you asked earlier about, like, when you first a pilot. I remember getting to the squadron as a Lieutenant JG, going out to the hangar bay, and there was a 60 Bravo in the hangar bay. And I opened the door and looked in the cockpit, and I said, I looked at all the circuit breakers and all the switches.
How you going to remember all of that?
Am I ever going to learn this?
Yeah.
And then I was getting to go back as the CO, which was just an incredible blessing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a story.
Life comes full circle.
Yeah, full circle. Yeah. That's a story. Yeah. That's a story. So when we met on a Ford, you the XO, different mentality, from the squadron world and all of that.
Yeah.
Because I seen you work. Like, I'm like, this dude, he up late, but then he up early in the gym getting the workout in.
Got to get in.
What was that like? Like, being an XO, but you were working. Like working. So like, how do you balance that, like for your mental?
Yeah.
Because that was a different thing. Like you in charge of these training teams, hey, the duty section of what we looking like.
In the shipyards
trying to get out. Yeah.
So very intimidating initially. Because we don't know that world. We only know it based on the time that we flew on the carrier. So limited parts of the carrier. You know where you sleep. You know where your ready room's at. You know the flight deck. You know where you eat. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the scope of your exposure when you're an aviator in a squadron on board. And then you probably know where the bridge is at too, because you might get up there once or twice. And so you come back as the XO, and it's intimidating because you're the XO. So you're expected to be a subject matter expert, and you don't know the ship.
Not like that.
You don't know the shipboard life like you need to know it. So again, you need to lean on, right? You need to connect with the team. You need to come in and be humble. You need to admit, there's just a lot I don't know, right? Yeah. Zone inspection.
Right.
I need some help. Right?
Yeah.
The MRC, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what that is.
Right.
And so in-serve, if that comes, whatever it may be, there's so many things that you just don't understand. And so if you come in and you try to pretend and fake it, they're going to know. Your team's going to know.
Oh, they know.
Especially the mess. The mess is going to call you out in a heartbeat, like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And so you got to be humble coming in. And then the thing about the carrier, though, it's so unique, is that I can even equate it to my first command tour. You're spoiled. There's so much depth and talent on board the carrier that if you're open to being vulnerable and admitting you don't know certain things, they're gonna probably wrap you up in their arms and say, "We got you." Right? XO, let us help you out. Right? We need you to be a good XO, and the only way you're gonna be a good XO is if you learn the job. And so let us help you. And so there's this, and especially on forward, right? Because we're a PCU. a pre-commissioning unit, we were so deep
Oh, yeah.
in the mess.
Oh, yes. Yes.
E6, E5.
Right. Oh,
you know,
yeah.
I mean, we had E5s check on board, and by the time I got there, they had been there 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they were chiefs.
Yeah.
And so they knew the ship, and they're talented. And so that was welcome, but also a little bit of a false sense of security, because then you grow and you learn and you develop relationships and you get better at doing the job and feel more comfortable in the job. But it usually takes a good 6 to 7 to 8 months, and by the time you do that, then you have about another 8 months, 9 months, 10 months, and then you're rolling. You spend about 18 months as the XO, and then you're rolling on, going to the next job. And so then you get to the next job, your deep draft command, and so I went to LPD 17 in San Antonio, and so then you check on board, and you're like, now it's like, all right, you're the CO, right?
You're the
so
guy.
there is no safety net now,
Right?
Like when a decision has to be made, it's you. One, it's you. Because the XO, you can have as many great ideas as you want. This is great. I think we should do this. Captain's like, we're not doing that. Right? Like, that's not going to happen. Like, okay. I mean, I thought it was a good idea.
Right.
And then you become CO, and all of a sudden it's like you are that last line of defense. And you don't always want to go to the flag and say, well, I don't know what to do here. And they're going to be like, well, you're the CO. You need to make a decision.
Call.
Right? Make a call. We can't have paralysis by analysis. You got to look at the facts, you got to look at the data, and you got to make a decision that benefits your ship and is going to execute the mission, takes care of your people. And so you get there, and you're like, okay, I think I can do this. But then you realize you got about 400 people on board, and you probably don't even have that, because usually right now the L class, they're the amphibs, they don't have the manning that they need, and that's a struggle across the force right now. But certainly, I think they're feeling it, because I still have friends that are in that world. And so you get there, and you just don't have the depth. You don't have a mess that's 200 to 250 deep with a whole bunch of talent.
Yeah.
And not everyone's created equal, right? Not all officers are created equal, nor are the chiefs. So you got some that are good, some that are great, and some that are struggling, right? And so, but on the carrier, it usually works out, because there's enough of those heavy hitters, hard chargers, those meat eaters that are like, I got you, and we're going to get after it and help, and we're going to help the team. And on the LPD, it's just harder, because it's a smaller mess. And also on the officer side, you don't have you got a couple LDOs,
but not
warrants, but not like you do in the carrier. So a lot of the wardroom are ensigns and JGs, second tour divos that are talent. And for us, we had a lot of talent at that level. They carried us on that ship.
Right.
But you don't have enough of it anywhere across the fleet, I think, on those ships. And so, sometimes you're standing on the bridge and you're like, man, I can't be the smartest guy on the bridge right now, because I know how to drive ships a little bit, but you don't drive the ship a lot as an XO on the carrier, right? Because you're doing XO stuff. You're getting underway.
That's true.
Seeing anchor. You're walking around the ship,
Oh,
making sure stuff's getting taken care of. When you're pulling in, you're walking around ship, making sure we're getting ready to pull back in, get trash off the ship, all that good stuff. And so, you go through your training pipeline, but you get out there, and sometimes when you're driving the ship, your team is driving the ship and you're on the bridge, you haven't had a lot of experience doing that. It is very intimidating. And it's that, hey, Dorothy, we're not in Kansas City, man. Like, this is for real. And if something goes down, right?
Right.
And rightly so, you are responsible as the captain. It is a universal, all-encompassing responsibility and accountability piece. You can't escape it, nor do you want to. And so, you got to be ready for that. And that was an adjustment as well.
And like you were saying earlier, as far as that power, that will make a person not want to give up that power, because, like you said, it's on me.
Yep. 100%.
Something happened.
But again, we're blessed. Had some JOs that were second tour divos. I had some department heads, and they were outstanding. My XO, both of my XOs, when I first came into the command, XO was great guy, but he left about a couple months, month and a half in. And then my two XOs after that, outstanding. Crystal Kanyas and then Stacey O'Neill, just amazing leaders and human beings. And so really, and SWOs. Surface Warfare officers by trade, and so they really helped me develop as a ship driver and as a leader on board the ship.
That's good. That's good. So the first time that you heard those 4 bells and San Antonio arriving, what did that?
Just feeling? Goosebumps every single time. Humbling. Obviously, very, very special. Never took it for granted. And I would even argue just as special, if not more, on the George Washington, right? Every time you come across the brow, you're departing the ship, and it's like, George Washington arriving, George Washington departing.
Right.
I'm like, this is insane. Like, they're calling me George Washington only because I'm simply blessed to be the command officer of this incredible warship and be tied to this incredible crew. And so that was something that was very, very humbling. And I made it a point, right? to tell myself, Brent, don't ever take that for granted. Because it's going to be gone, and you're going to miss it, and you know you're going to miss it. Because you love the San Antonio, you love the George Washington, you love the ship and the crew. And so every day, make sure you recognize how much that means to you and how blessed you are to be in this position. So
True indeed. That's true indeed. Yeah. The GW, that was a challenge. I know getting out of the shipyard. I don't know what was probably worse, the Ford or the GW, but I know both of them were challenging to get out the shipyard. Because when I was on the GW, because I retired right before you got there, and they've been in there for a while.
Right.
For a while. But there was a lot going on at the same time, trying to get out the yards, keep the sailors grounded, they getting upset, frustrated, things like that. What were you dealing with? And that's your final tour. You had a whole bunch of emotions, from the sailors, getting the ship underway, retirement. Like, you had a lot going on. How did you stay grounded through that moment?
I mean, I think, my family certainly keeps me grounded, right? I mean, you walk on board a carrier and you're the CO, and it's like, hey, you're the man, or you think you're the man, and then you go home and your wife's like, hey, change some diapers, do the dishes, right? I've been with the kids today, and I need you to get after it as a dad and as a husband. And so that my family kept me, grounded. Okay. And I think too, you get later in your career, you've been knocked to your knees enough, right? You're different than you were when you first came in. It's not that you're not confident, you don't believe in yourself. In fact, you probably do more so than when you first came in. But you're also humble enough. You've been humbled enough to not be arrogant about it,
right?
And so I came into it with that mindset. Now I'll tell you, when I found out I was going to GW, I was so excited.
Really?
I was like, man, I mean, GW, our first president,
yeah.
Great history for that warship, and also with the mindset that the ship was going to come out of the shipyard and then potentially having a chance to join the team and take the ship to Japan, because knowing at that point that she was going to become the forward deployed Naval Forces aircraft carrier, a homecoming in a sense, because when she was already there, left Japan to come back to Norfolk to do the refueling and complex overhaul. And for those that don't know in the audience, the refueling complex overhaul, that midlife, every carrier has it.
Yeah, 25
massive
years.
upgrades to the ship, new fuel in the cores, and so it's going to take a good 4.5 years. So I was really excited about the opportunity. Once I got to the shipyard. Now again, there's a lot of other factors involved. COVID was going on, so this was 21. So we were still in the midst of COVID, and really, weren't really going to be through it for at least another year, because as COVID started to cease and desist a bit towards the end of 21, and then everyone went on Christmas break, and you came back, and then it was the Delta variant or actually maybe the Delta variant was before that in the fall, and then Omicron came out, that variant in early 22, and so even more people were getting sick. It wasn't, I think, as devastating health-wise, but people were getting it, and they were popping positive.
Right.
And so it just affected, we had to quarantine, affected, how many sailors we had on board, crew morale. So when I got there, it was one of those times in my career where 27 and a half years in at that point, and I felt like God has prepared me for this. I really felt that. I said, you know what? I've been in the shipyard on the San Antonio. I've been on board ships now. I know how ships operate. I've been blessed to experience a lot. I felt like I was ready. He had armed me for that challenge. So I get on board, June of 21, take over, and morale was at an all-time low. Ship had been there for, at that point, had really started the Avail in January of 17 at Naval Station Norfolk, and then got dead sticked. And dead stick just means that the tugs are taking you over, not under their own power. In the summer of 17, and then had been there since then. So really 4.5 years that had already been in the RCOH process. And so I got there, and the sailors were, a lot of sailors, first time on a ship, excited about joining, excited about the fleet. Guess where you're going? Congratulations. You're going to Newport News, and you're going to be on the George Washington. You're going to the shipyard. And the shipyard just had not been, and was at that point not set up to support a junior sailor. Yeah, and we know that now, right? We knew it then, but we weren't doing anything about it. And we certainly know it now, and we're finally doing something about it. And so, you know me, Ty, and AP, you know me. Glass half full, glass 3/4 full, right? Love life, love serving, love being with the sailors, and got on board excited, and they're like, dude, who's this guy? You're just another 06 who's just worried about himself, worried about your career, want to make admiral. And it was a real struggle. The morale was as low as I'd seen in any command that I'd ever been in, either as part of or exposed to and seen. And so get on board, people still wearing masks, discipline, military bearing on board, all-time low, and so just said, okay, we got to get after it. We got to navigate through this. So, immediately tried to connect with the wardroom and the mess. I knew the mess was the most critical part of it, but I knew the wardroom was important too. So really focused on that. The unfortunate part was I love having all hands calls and I love talking to people. We couldn't even do it. We couldn't have an all hands call. In fact, we didn't have an all hands call until really early in 22, probably April timeframe of 22, and I'll get to that in a second. So on board, the Stennis was coming into the shipyard, so we had to start moving people back on board. We weren't ready for that, but we did it because we had to make room in the barracks for the Stennis sailors. And so we moved them back on board. One of my regrets should have been a stronger leader, should have said, hey, listen, I know I'm just new here, but they're not ready to come on board yet. We're just not ready to do this. Yeah. And so tried to get, into the ship and embedded with the crew as quickly as possible to get to know them. So fast forward and get to 22. And so it was April of 22, April 9th, 10th, and 15th, 3 days that I will never forget. So at that point, I had been in command, probably 9 months or so. And we had 3 suicides in 6 days. So we had suicide on a Saturday night, got a call that one of our sailors had taken his life. So, you're obviously in shock. Actually, he was an RS. I probably knew him better as a junior sailor than any other junior sailor on board because he cut my hair.
Yeah, wow.
He was my barber. Great young man, Mikhail Sharp. And so, obviously, I would have been devastated no matter who the sailor was, but there obviously was, right away, I knew who it was.
You knew, right, when they said the name, you knew.
So there's a number of things you got to go through. If there's a process you got to go through, I had to call, obviously my chain of command, CMC, XO, let them know what was going on, because I was the first one to get the call, called the admiral, told him what was going on. He was fantastic. He's like, what support do you need? I'm like, right now, sir, we got to figure this out. I'll let you know. And so, that was a long evening. It was late at night, so long evening instead of the early morning. Yeah. As it turns out, I was going on board the next day. We were actually doing a Torah rededication in the forecastle on the ship. Mm-hmm. So the Jewish Council was coming on board. An incredible family, had donated a ton of money to restore the Torah. And so we were going to do a rededication ceremony in the forecastle, so we did it. So it was a little bit of goodness amongst the tragedy, and so I still knew we had a lot to do, and I knew I had to prepare to notify the crew the next day on that Monday when they got back to the ship. And after the ceremony had finished in the forecastle, the CDO, the command duty officer, comes up and says, sir, I gotta talk to you. And I could tell right away when he walked in something was going on, and he's like, sir, I need you to come over here. So I walked over, and I said, hey, what's going on? He's like, hey, sir, we just found one of our sailors in her apartment off the ship. And so an incredible young lady, I seaman, Natasha Huffman, and so she had passed. Mm. So we then notified chain of command, called the admiral again, told him what happened, came back the next day. And then at that point, we were in triage mode, trying to do everything we can to talk to the crew, to get the word out, tell them what happened, got on the 1MC because we weren't doing all hands calls just for safety reasons with COVID. And so told the crew. And we had some folks, there's some support structures out there. A sprint team came on board to help us out, talk to the sailors for those that needed the support. And as it turns out, so we got through that week and opened up the door, talked to a lot of sailors who were frustrated. In fact, I even had a sailor who had left me a note in the CO suggestion box a couple weeks prior that had said, hey, listen, you know what? I can't stand you. A lot of sailors can't. We think you're part of the problem. Right? Again, you're just another 06 who's just looking out for himself. The morale's low. We're not doing anything about it. All you care about is the ship getting rebuilt and us getting back to sea. Mm-hmm. And so, someone's going to kill themselves. And that's going to be on you. And I didn't really know how to respond to that. It wasn't like I was going to get on the 1MC and say, hey, whoever said that this was going to happen, come talk to me. Right. So as soon as that Monday came and I notified the crew that we had lost our 2 sailors, he wrote me another note. He said, I told you. And the blood's on your hands, Captain. So enjoy that. So I had a decision to make. And so I got on the 1MC and said, I could have said, hey, I'm the captain of the ship. Don't be disrespectful. If you're going to put something in the safe suggestion box, make it, something that I can work with. 2, I could have done nothing at all. Or 3, what I ended up doing was get on the 1MC, which is the intercom that goes through the whole ship so I could talk to the crew, and say, hey, right, I'm hurting too. So someone put this in my safe suggestion box. I don't know who you are, and I can't do anything with this unless you come talk to me. Come talk to me. Non-punitive, right? Just come into the CO's cabin. Let's sit down. Tell me how we make this better. Tell me what I'm missing, and how do we turn this around? How do we move forward as a team and as a family? And I talked a lot about that. We as our family, and I know a lot of our sailors just didn't buy into it. They didn't believe it because they were like, there's so much scar tissue that had built up based on their experiences in the shipyard and on the ship.
Correct.
So we get through that week. So to that sailor's credit, he shows up a couple days later, comes and talks to me. AB. And we sat down, had a great conversation. And he gave me some things that I hadn't really considered or thought about. And so we triaged that whole week, just talking to sailors, me, CMCXO, and just listening, just writing notes. I still have my notebooks, all the things that we talked about. So that week I was scheduled to go on a family vacation with my family to Disney World with the 3 little kids. This is 2022, so they're 11, 9 and 7 now. So just back that up to 2022. And so my wife's like, you missed a lot of vacations. We've had this plan for a year with the family. COVID is cleaning up now, right? We can go on a vacation, can go to Disney World, so we're going. So I felt like the ship was in good hands with XO and CMC. I trusted them, with unequivocally I trusted them. And so we flew out on a Friday. So we get to Orlando that Friday, and that's the 15th. We fly to Orlando, get there, we get settled into where we're staying, big sprawling complex. All of my wife's family's there, my in-laws. They have kids as well, so the cousins are having a big time. Right across from where we were staying, and our rooms were all, almost co-joined basically, right next to each other. There's big kahunas. There's a pool, it's a bar. We go down there, kids are swimming and playing. Had one beer, I was like, that tastes pretty good. It made me feel like a human again for the first time in a few days.
You needed that. You needed that vacation.
I did. Had another one. I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better. So we get the kids, go back to the room. It's probably 9:30. My phone rings. It's a San Antonio number. I don't recognize it. So I'm like, it's probably, I'm just not going to take that. So, hung up. Immediately I get a text, and we're getting the kids ready for bed, and it says, Captain, I need you to call me. It's our A-Seco, who was the acting Seco at the time. It says, I need you to call me ASAP. And I just knew. And so I called him, and he said, Captain, we lost one of our sailors, one of our MAs, was on watch on the ship and shot himself. And so I go, okay. I'm going to call the CDO and talk to the CDO. I'm going to call XO and CMC, let them know, and then we'll go from there. And I hung up the phone, and for one of the few times in my career, especially in the latter part of my career, when I felt so confident when I got to the ship that I knew God had prepared me for this. I knew what to do. I knew what I had a vision for the ship and how we were going to move forward as a team and lead the team. And I sat there for a second, and I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do right now.
Yeah.
So I sat there and I thought about it, and I go, all right, let's go. Brent, you got to snap out of it, dude. Like, let's get moving. You got to, your team needs you right now. So called the Admiral, called XO and CMC, told him what was going on, called the Admiral, and talked to him. And so made a decision. It was Friday of 22, it's the 15th of April. Easter Sunday was Sunday. So told my wife what happened, of course. So I stayed there till Easter Sunday, so we could we had brought eggs with us, so we put the eggs out on the grass, and the kids did their Easter egg hunt. As soon as that was done, I went to the airport and then flew home. And so got home, and in the airport on the way home, actually had to sleep on the floor at JFK because I got diverted from Charlotte to JFK, and they're like, we don't have a flight to Norfolk. And so I slept on the floor. I slept for like 2 hours. They play music all night in the airport, by the way. And so got up, and I really couldn't sleep anyway. And I wrote my words that I wanted to share with the crew. So got back to the ship, did the all hands call. First one we did. And I was standing on top of a JLG, had the whole crew there. And I opened up my heart, and I talked about what I'd written down. And I said, hey, this is what happened, and we're going to have to fight through this together. And it was one of the lowest points, of course, if not the lowest of my life, not just my personal, but my professional, in that I was looking at the crew, and they're like, we don't believe you, we don't trust you, and we don't care about you. And so I knew that we had a daunting task in front of us to try to pull the crew back together. I talked to XO and CMC. I got down off the JLG and we huddled up in the import cabin. And I said, we can do this, right? But we're going to have to make some significant changes, and we're going to have to do this the way that we think is right. We cannot worry about self-preservation. We can't worry about getting fired. We got to do what we think is right for the crew. And that taught me so much. That was a pivot point for me in my leadership journey. And it happened obviously late in my career at the near 28-year point. But it made the last 2 years mean so much because no longer was I leading out of fear. It was leading out of take all the information and do what you think is right based on the input that you're getting, and just based on your gut. Yeah. Based on doing this for 28 years. So there was a time
leading by faith.
Yeah, and that 100%. And on the faith part, Ty. Mm-hmm. So a couple things out of that experience. One was it was May of 22. CNO and SecNav come on board because of course at that point it started right. Everyone, like the things that were being written in the paper, and just reckless comments. People that were the things that were being written and also said on social media by people who knew nothing about the ship. They didn't know what was going on inside the lifelines. But there's nothing that you could do about that, right? And I knew that. And I knew, so I told, there was one time when someone wrote me on Facebook Messenger and said, you know how people can write you on Facebook Messenger and they don't have to be connected to you. And then you can either accept it, respond to it, or you can just block it and deny it. So someone wrote me on Facebook Messenger and said, hey, congratulations. You've killed more people on your ship than we killed or that died in a combat deployment to Afghanistan. What? I wish it had been you that had died. And so I saw that, and I go, bullying and everything, and I always thought to myself, hey, just ignore that kind of stuff. Like, how does that affect people?
But you're human.
But in the moment, I realized, like, wow, that stings. And so what I really wanted to write was, I tell you what, I live in Norfolk. So why don't you meet me on this corner and then we'll have a discussion, and I'll tell you how me and my team are leading the ship and what we're doing. Right. But I knew in the moment, and I feel like it was his presence, right? Don't do that, Brent. That's not going to do anything, right? It's not going to get you anywhere. You need to be focused on your team and what's going on inside the lifelines of the ship. So almost immediately I called the PAO and I said, hey, listen, the public affairs officer, I said, I'm not going to read any articles on GW, and I'm not going to Google it. If there's something, your job is to look at those articles. If there's something that I need to read, you send it to me and let me know. Other than that, I'm going to focus on the most important thing. That's our crew, and that's the ship. That's our sailors. And so, the second Aviator came, and we knew that firestorm was coming. They came on board. They visited. It was a good visit. They left. And so the admiral, my boss, we were sitting together in the import cabin, and he said, he's like, listen, Brent, I know things are tough right now, but I believe in you. I believe in your team, and I think you guys can turn this around. And quite honestly, the Navy, we need you to. The Truman is on deployment right now. They're in the Med, right? They're in the Red Sea. They're supporting Ukraine. And I know you'd rather be there underway doing the mission. And I looked at him and I said, sir, I certainly appreciate that. And I want you to know I'm not saying this because I'm looking for a fit rep bullet. Because quite honestly, at that time, my wife and I were already having conversations about, the end game and retiring. Right. And I said, so I'm not telling you this because I want a fit rep bullet. I'm exactly where God needs me to be. There's no doubt in my mind, right? In the last couple of weeks, I've been thinking about it. And I know everything that I've been through, that I've experienced in my career, all the people that have come into my life to help me and to guide me has led to this. Yeah. All the times that I made mistakes, I could imagine him looking down on me saying, you are such a knucklehead. Right. But I'm going to save you one more time because in June of 21, I need you to take command of the George Washington. Because that ship's going to go through some things, and I need you to be there with that team. Wow. And I need you to help that team. And they're going to help you. It's going to change your life forever. And so I told him that. And I said, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. There you go. And he goes, okay, I appreciate that, Hollywood. And so that's good. Fast forward, and now we're doing all hands calls with the sailors. Normally that's something that COs do first 2 weeks, month of their command tour. Again, we couldn't do it because we couldn't have big gatherings. Right. I told the crew we just got to do it. So we're in Hangar Bay 1, and we're setting up these all hands calls, and we're sitting there, and I'm talking to probably about 100 sailors or so. And I walk down, I'm fired up, ready to go,
Right,
you know,
right,
and I'm excited
right.
to talk to him. And there's one young sailor, and so it was two sections of seats with a kind of an aisle in the middle where they can walk down. And there's one sailor, and he's kind of sitting there, his legs are out, you know, and he's kind of leaning back. And so I said, hey, warfighters, I'm fired up to be here with you today, you know, and so thank you for taking some time out. And so, hey, who's excited to be here today? Out of the 100 or so, there's probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 that raise their hand. Not many.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I am. And I said, hey, you know, why not? And so I look at that one sailor. I said, hey, sailor, shipmate, why aren't you excited about being here today? And he's like, I think you're full of shit.
Oh, wow.
And I go, very well. I said, why? And he goes, because I just think you're doing all this just because people are watching. And I don't think anything's going to change. I think in a month or two, it's all going to be OBE, overcome by different events. And we're just going to go back to being the way that we've always been. And nothing's going to change fundamentally. And I looked at him and I said, I tell you what, AB. He was an AB. I said, first of all, and he was an E3 at the time. I said, first of all, I'll give you a lot of credit. Right? That took a lot of guts. Even if you don't realize it took a lot of guts.
Yeah.
The old school sailor will understand that took a lot of guts to say that to the command officer of one of 11 ships in the world that do we do. 12 if you count JFK being built right now, but 11 that are operational. So I give you a lot of credit. 2, I fundamentally disagree with you. Right? And I'm going to tell you why. And so then I just kind of went, and the one thing I did with our team, we SR, that we did, and I told CMC and XO, like, we still got to lead hard, right? I mean, that's authorized.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
they don't
you got
change.
you
They
got to
don't
do
change.
that, right?
Yeah, they don't change.
The mission's not going to change,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah,
still
yeah.
got to redeliver the ship because the ship's got to go to Japan.
Yeah.
And our nation, our Navy need that. But we're going to be compassionate, and we're going to try to understand where the sailors are coming from. But you're still authorized to lead hard. And I told him, I was like, listen, this isn't Brent Gaut ship.
Yeah.
This is the USS George Washington, right? It's a United States ship. This is our ship. Every one of us have a part in the success of this ship. When you walk down the street and they see your ball cap, they're not going to go, that's Brent Gaut sailor. That's going to be, they're going to say, well, there's another GW sailor. We're ship in the Navy. We're ship to be a part of. So it is on all of us. If you're going to be here and we're going to do this, right? Whether you want to stay in or get out, why not be great? If we're going to do it, let's do it
Let's
right.
do it right. Yeah.
And you have as much accountability and ownership of this as I do. Now, you might not care as much as I do, but man, if you could just get somewhere in the area code of my motivation and love and care for this ship, we'll be doing something right. So I put that on you now, right? When you come to work every day, instead of complaining about the situation, it's not that I don't want you to tell me what's wrong, because I have the ability, right, to change the trajectory of your life and others in one day by making a phone call. I got that, and I dig that, and I want to hear your complaints. But instead of just coming in just to complain, look yourself in the mirror and say, what can I do to make it better?
Right.
What can I do to affect my shipmates in a positive way? What can I do to contribute to this ship getting out of the shipyard one day sooner than it's supposed to? So I'm going to hold you to that. I ask you to think about that, because I tell you what, shipmate, every day that I come into work, I'm not shortchanging you. At the expense of my family, my friends, and probably my overall well-being, I'm going to give you everything I got.
Yeah.
Every single day. Till the day I walk off that brown, they bong me off. By whatever means they do it, whether I'm getting fired or I'm going with the band playing, I'm going to give you every single bit of my heart and soul to turn this around.
That's good.
And so I don't know if that was the driving force, but certainly I do think that from then on, and I told the team, I told XO, CMC, we're going to over-communicate. I'm going to get on the 1MC, I'm going to talk to the crew, and we're going to do, we're going to look at, all the different things that we can do. We're going to pivot, in a sense, and really show the sailors, hey, we do, right, give a shit. Because here's the thing. It's not that today's sailor doesn't want to serve and doesn't care. Man, there's a bunch of warfighters out there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But they just want to, they want you to earn, right? Their love language is acts. Don't tell me you care about me and love me. Show me you care about me and love me. Yeah. Right? So, Captain, stop talking about how much you care or how much you want me to do for the ship. When I have to drive to a satellite parking lot and they get bussed in, it takes me 2 or 3 hours to even to get to work. And then I come on board and you're like, hey, give me your best effort. It's like, I tell you what, how about you find a parking lot closer to the ship? And then maybe I'll think about giving you my best effort. And so I said, we got to pivot. I remember my supply officer at the time, total warfighter, prior enlisted, got commissioned, right? Now it was an 05 at the time, now 06. he said, but Captain, you keep telling us how important it is that we got to keep fighting to redeliver the ship. And I said, I know, Bubba, but we're going to pivot right now.
Yeah.
Right? So we're still going to work towards that goal, but we have to show the sailors. We have to be sailor-facing. We love you. We care about you, and we're not going to just talk about it. We're going to show you. So here are all the things, and I need ideas from you. It's not going to be. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, so I need you to tell me what you think we can do to do that. So we came up with a number of things that over time that we did that I think started to turn the tide. And I will tell you, and again, that was the May, June, July timeframe of 22. By the time we got to September 23, we did a family day cruise, a one-day cruise on a Sunday, because we knew the ship was going to Japan, and the ship would not, a lot of family members would not have a chance to fly overseas to go see their family. So we had family come in to Norfolk, and we got underway on a Sunday. Beautiful day, perfect day, couldn't have been better. Weather, temperature, flight, air power demo, families just loved it. I mean, we had probably, with all of our sailors, another 2,000 family members on board. And that same sailor who had sat there said, I just don't think you're going to change. I don't think anything's going to change.
Right.
At that point, ABH2 introduces me to his family and says, Captain, I just really wanted my family to meet you. And had a big smile on his face. I called him Monty. That was my call sign for him. I said, Monty. I said, hey, I appreciate you, Monty. And met his family. I said, hey, you should be so proud of your son. Just an extraordinary young man. You should be very proud. And he had gone from that young man who doubted everything about the ship. He had gone out on a TAD, got to be underway on the flight deck, got to do his job. I got to practice his rating at sea. Came back with a smile on his face.
Right.
Checked in with him. He's like, Captain, that was amazing. Like, I love it. And then again, just keep fast forward until we got to the family day cruise, and he was like, I want to introduce you to my family and that was the day I felt like, you know what?
We
still got a lot of work to do, but it's starting to turn.
I mean, because it's like I definitely remember those times and the press that the G-Dub was getting at that time. It was almost like I'm not gonna call it a perfect storm or anything like that, but it's a lot of those things you couldn't prevent even if you wanted to. Like those sailors who did what they felt was their answer. Some of that stuff probably didn't even have nothing to do with the military at all, or just personal things that was going on within them. And the shipyard, been there, done that. That's this whole beast. And like you said, Stennis is on his way over there, so we know what that means. Y'all got to get on to the ship. COVID happening, putting everything behind schedule. It was a lot that you had to tackle and overcome. And just to hear you say that, I'm not worried about getting fired. I got to do what I have to do. When all eyes was definitely on the G-Dub during that time.
And AP, I mean, you take that on board though, right? Because you are the captain. So again, that ultimate accountability, responsibility for the ship, you can't vacate that, nor do you want to.
No.
And so you take it, because you take the good with the bad, right? And or the tragedy or the negative, because there's so many moments that are magical. But if you want that, you gotta deal with the rest as well. And I'll tell you this: probably one of the most powerful moments on board the ship was when we lost one of our sailors. And for those that don't know, a lot of times what happens is you lose the sailor. Obviously you got to work with the crew, get help for those that need it. You're contacting the family, working with them, going through all the things, the checklist of things that need to be done for the sailor that's now deceased. And then ultimately you want to bring the family in to town for memorial service. You want to bring them on board. You want them to be able to see where their child or the family member worked, to meet some of their friends, to get to know that side of their life. And so one of those times we had a family come on board, and one of the sailors that we had lost, and we're sitting in the XO's conference room. And we're sitting there, and we had some food. Supper had done a great job putting food and some drinks out and whatnot. And the family's sitting there, and obviously, it was a very emotional day, because they actually, in that case, normally we had the memorial service and would bring them on board after that. But in this case, they came into town. We brought them on board first, and then we were doing the memorial service the next day. And so this was the first time we had met face to face. And so the dad is sitting there, and you could tell, old school guy, built, and kind of leaning, the kind of guys leaning forward,
right?
And just in life in general. And he looks at me and he says, "You failed my son."
And that's what I was going to.
Yeah, you failed my son. And so I looked at him, And I said,
Wow.
sir, I'll take that because I'm the command officer and everything on board this warship is my responsibility. And I'm going to tell you this as well. I don't know if there could be a greater tragedy than losing your son and the other 2 that we lost in that 6-day period. But if there was, it would be that happened and then we do nothing with it. So all I can assure you and promise you is that as long as I'm blessed to be the command officer of this warship, we were going to do everything we can to make sure that never happens again. And unfortunately it did, right? It'd be because, to your point, I think that there's a lot going on in today's society.
Yes.
That it's not just a Navy problem. It's not just an armed forces problem. I think it's a society
problem.
Yes.
Challenge. And not even problem, I'd say challenge. Because a lot of people are struggling, young and old.
Yes.
And it's hard for me to understand why that's now an acceptable option, but people are considering it and sometimes doing it, and leaving a lot of victims behind too. So, so I just assured that dad, I'm going to do everything I can with our team to make sure it doesn't happen again. And we did. We worked hard towards that end, and in the end failed because it happened again, and it was devastating when it happened. But that was a very humbling moment, of, hey, you are the captain, and I'm not going to shirk that responsibility. I mean, I'll own it, and I'm going to assure you that we are going to give everything we have to making sure it doesn't happen again.
Because I can only imagine, at this point, as this is happening, and because I've been a CACO myself, so I'm familiar with that process as well. Even on a baton, when a situation that's similar happened with someone on the ship, I was kind of the CACO for that. During that time in the G-Dub, it was just like, again, I remember stuff being on ABC News, World News, and everyone is calling in. Like my son, my daughter called me, said they living in their car, and me as a previous sailor, not previous, but as a sailor, it's just like, okay, I'm reading between what the parent is saying, and to have someone actually come on board and sit down and tell you that, like, wow, that's heavy.
Well, and I do think, again, when I said, the greater tragedy, we would do nothing with it. So I do give our Navy, and we all 3 of us love our Navy, right? And are very grateful for our time in the Navy. I do give our Navy and senior leadership a lot of credit in the sense that a lot of times in the Navy when things happen, it's hot and heavy for a couple months, and then it does become OBE, overcome by events, because something else pops up. And then this one, that didn't happen, right? So because of the interest from Washington, D.C., and congressional Senate leaders, because of our senior leaders in the Navy saying, hey, like, what is going on, and how do we address this and fix this? There's a lot of things that now have been put into place, and initiatives that have been started and are currently being worked on that are going to benefit the sailor, that or have already have benefited the junior sailor and will continue to benefit the sailor, as we move into the future. A parking garage that's being built outside the fence line of Newport News, an absolute blessing. A centrally located place where sailors can park and then not have to, and then bus them into the ship, vice walking from 50th Street, where it's a 3/4 of a mile walk. Rain, shine, hot, cold. You're walking. And so that, I think those things and other things like that, when a ship's in availability, no longer having sailors live on board, right? Finding a room for them somewhere.
Never understood
hotel,
why.
barracks.
Never understood it.
Yeah, so
never understood
those little things make a difference. And it's not a little thing, it's a big thing.
It's
right?
huge.
The Wi-Fi now on the ships, right? I mean, we as old guys can say, well, we never had it. But the bottom line is that today's young person, right, they connect differently than we did. And so just giving them that ability to do that, it's a game changer. Right, they're walking around the ship. They're smiling. They're like, Captain, thank you for that, ability to do that. I was able to call my mom or dad. And for those that are worried about OPSEC, I mean, obviously we can turn it on and off, and secure it at various times when OPSEC is a concern. But to be able to do that and to just open our aperture as leaders, right? Because we're creatures of habit in the Navy, so we always think, well, it has to be done that way because that's the way it's always been done.
Right.
Once we start getting outside of that a little bit and be like, okay, does it have to be done that way? I mean, maybe if I extend a little bit of trust to the junior sailor, to the warfighters out there, they're going to surprise us.
Right.
They're actually going to do the right thing, and they're going to take advantage of the opportunity but not abuse it. And some will, but even if one or two does, it doesn't mean the whole group needs to be punished for that.
Right.
I think that is that next step of evolution for us as senior leaders in the Navy, or maybe not us as senior leaders, because we're not in the Navy, but our shipmates and our brothers and sisters, is to know that option is out there now. And again, I think the junior sailor will surprise us, because a lot of times they will step up and do the right thing, and we're kind of stuck. We were stuck for a long time in a certain mindset, and I think we're starting to evolve.
Right. And I believe, honestly, because people our generation, we were stuck in the box. Now, I always talk about the box, but this generation, they like, it's no ceiling for us. We don't even recognize the ceiling. Like, we just want to make change, and some good, some bad, but the older leaders are fearful of that change, but it's like, you got to be able to open your eyes and say, hey, it's okay. Did I complain about walking from 50th Street to the ship? No, it was nothing for me. I'm like, it's nothing but a walk. It's get my mind right to deal with what I'm about to deal with today. Then it helps me walk when I leave the ship to go back to the car.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like data dumping a lot of stuff. Like, hey, how could I have done this better? How did this day go? How did that go? How did we handle that? The walk was good for me. But I guess for some of them, like, why are we walking and we could get closer? Or why are we living on a ship and they can build us a thing? Like, they got plenty of money. Yeah. You can talk about a budget and all of that, but it's plenty of money.
And that's in the sailor today, right?
Yeah.
They're smart, and they know. And here's the thing. I mean,
they know.
They know, and we have to work hard to bring that young person, that great young human being into the Navy.
Right.
And then we got to work equally as hard to retain them, because here's the thing. They know that there's options for them on the outside. And so we have to evolve as a force, because if the fight is coming, we're gonna pray and hope that it doesn't.
That's all you can do.
Because if it does, then we're gonna lose a lot of great human beings, and there's gonna be a lot of tragedy and sadness. But if the fight comes, we got to be ready to fight.
Right.
Because in the moment, it's too late to say, I wish I would have prepared better. But to do that, we got to have the force to do it. Yes. And so we have to continue to evolve. We have to be able to show sailors, yes, I am going. And one of the things, Ty, that I told the team when we were going through all of that, I said, listen, we're going to have to improve in some areas. Mental health, right?
That's huge.
Quality of life,
huge.
Morale. All three of those things are going to have to improve.
Have to.
It is on me as your captain and the team, blessed to lead you, to get better in those areas. Because here's the one variable that's not going to change: how hard it is. Yeah. Right? The job's not going away. No. The challenge and the difficulties. And in fact, we're in the shipyard now. It is only going to get harder. As we get closer to break-in suction from the pier and getting underway, it is going to get harder. So we have to improve those other areas so that I, as your captain, can continue to ask and demand, in fact, that you give me everything you have so that we can be successful in meeting the nation's and the Navy's needs to get this ship back up to speed, to get it operational again, to get it back to sea, ready to fight, ready to go across, back to Japan, and ready to be that one forward deployed Naval Forces aircraft carrier. And so, it was a very honest and raw conversation. But again, once we showed them, like, acts, don't tell me, show me, then they started to believe. And we talked about that all the time. It was one of our words around the ship: believe. Believe in yourself and believe in us as a team. We as our, right? We're not going to do it alone. We're going to do it together. But that's part of the battle. I always told them, you are some of the most extraordinary people in the world.
I had no idea.
I have no idea why you don't have more confidence in yourself. Yeah. Right? So I'm just going to tell you, you're awesome. You're the 1%ers, right? Not everyone's serving. 1% of you serve in the armed forces, right? You're the outliers. So go have that confidence. Believe in yourself. And if you are having any struggles or challenges in being the best version of yourself, well, that's why I'm here. It's a primary part of my job. Remove the obstacles. Your chief, remove your obstacles. Your divo, remove your obstacles so that you can be the best version of yourself. So let's go get it.
Yeah. You kind of already answered the question, but I just wondered, was it just a thought? You stated that before all this even happened, you already had the notion or the thought of, like, okay, this is kind of like my last ride. But overcoming those years, months, I would think that anything else after that is smooth sailing.
Oh, yeah, it had to be easy. It would have to be easy.
Hey, we need you here. We need you there. Did you ever change your mind about, I give him one more.
One more tour. So certainly, hard conversations with my beautiful bride, April, my wife. We got married in 2007, been together ever since, and she's been through me. That was when I was a department head, and I mean, it was a grind. Ever since then, really, it was a grind. DC, and then back to San Diego, command. Really, I wouldn't have even accepted the offer to get into the aviation nuclear pipeline without her, saying like, "Hey, let's go do this as a family." And she talked me off the ledge a number of times going through new power school, and it was hard. And she's like, "Hey, come on, you can do it. Just hang in there, right? I mean, it's just school. You got to get through this to get to the carrier. So let's do what we got to do." But we had some really hard heart-to-hearts, AB, and there were times when our kids are younger. They're 11, 9, and 7 now. And there were times when we had some hard conversations, and I was really, in my mind, I was like, baby, I think we could do this. Like, let's compete for flag. Let's see if we can get selected. And so she was like, I just think it's time for us to move on as a family. And so there was a time when we were praying as a family, and I was praying, God, please, show me a sign. But really what I was praying for was, looking back now, God, show her a sign. Show her the sign that I should stay in and continue to serve and get selected to be a flag and then be an admiral.
Right.
And so when we had that family day cruise in September of 23 and went out, we got home that night exhausted because we'd been up at 4 o'clock in the morning. All of our family on board. So many of my closest friends on board.
That's good.
Yeah, got home, pulled in right at like sunset, and got home. And so we went upstairs. Her parents were staying with us, and my in-laws. We went upstairs, and I said, "Baby, now that you've seen me, like you saw today, right? It was just magical. And all the sailors and their families and our family and friends and like you saw me in my element doing what I do and I love to do it. Like maybe we got one more, ride in us, And she looked at me and we had some, we're both Aquariuses and so we're both pretty passionate. So we fight hard but love hard. And so we had some, some really intense conversations. But she just simply looked at me and she said, "Baby, I love you. And I'm so proud of you. And today was an unbelievable day. But it's time."
Wow.
Right? It's just time for us to be a family and for you to come home to us. And I looked at her and I said, I didn't raise my voice. We didn't argue. We didn't fight. And I said, "Okay, baby, I love you. I'm going downstairs." And I went downstairs and I thought about it. And I realized in that moment, I'd been praying for a sign and she was my sign.
Wow.
She was it. It was my wife. My wife just saying, like, "I love you, but we're not going to grow closer if you stay in. I'll support you. I'm not going to leave you, but it's not getting better." Right? And it was a struggle on us as a family. Trying to raise a family, newly married, going through the program. The requirements in the carrier for all senior leaders and our junior sailors, everybody. It's hard for everybody, And so I knew in that moment that it was time. And so I made the decision. We made the decision as a family and haven't looked back. And there's certain things I missed, but certainly the time, my bucket is filled now. That white space is filled with time with my family, my wife, my 3 kids, time that I probably wouldn't have had otherwise. And I found a great job at Atlantic Dive and Supply here in Virginia Beach, local company. Great people, a lot of them, prior military, first responders. And we're helping the warfighter. We're getting the warfighter what they need faster and helping them, making sure they have what they need, because all 3 of us know that so many times we're asking sailors to do hard jobs and not giving them what they need. And so that's helping fill in my bucket and giving me purpose, that and my family.
Hey, we appreciate you. The story, like, that's why you Hollywood. That's why you Hollywood. Hey, thank you for coming on. Thank you for blessing us. And your story is amazing. It's amazing. And I love the fact that, like, your journey, just from a young ensign to where you at today, you had influential leaders that helped you, the officer side, the enlisted side, but it shaped you and molded you to the man that you are today. So I greatly appreciate you doing what you did.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
I appreciate both you guys. It's just been an absolute, honor and privilege and blessing to be with you. And I'll tell you, the last thing I'll leave you with is for you and for everyone else that we served with, for all the sailors that I was blessed to work alongside, for my CMCs. I love all of them. By the way, Randy Swanson said if I don't give him a shout out, he's going to be
all
me.
good.
So, Randy, I love you, brother. I love all my CMCs. But I'll say this, right? the longer you go in our profession that we're blessed to do, the more you realize, how much you need the people that you serve with, right? And again, it's about the people. And I will tell you that every single time that I felt lost, you saved me, right? You and the other sailors that I was blessed to work with. Every single time that I got off the path that I was supposed to be on, you guys picked me up. You were there to catch me and support me and invest in me. And that's why every single command I went to, I was like, be worth it, Brent. All the sailors that invested in you previously and believed in you, make sure that you're making them proud, right? I mean, I was driven by, of course, making my family proud and just wanting to be great at what you do, but it was the sailors that I serve with. And I will tell you this, and I'll say it today, I said it then, I'll say it now, every one of you, you weren't an interruption to my day, you were the reason for it. And I was blessed to serve with you, so I love you guys and appreciate you.
Love you too. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
That's good. That's right. That's good.